Hello, thank you for being in a new video. This time I have a full review of the Galaxy A35. Let's get started. This device is part of Samsung's mid-range, and as of now I anticipate you that it is very similar to the Galaxy A54. So it seems that Samsung has raised the bar for all its devices, and this one, which is part of the 30 series, now looks like a 50 series device of the last generation. It is definitely going to offer us very attractive things, especially considering its price, which curiously is not as high as Samsung had us used to. In Mexico, the launch price is 6,999 pesos. This is approximately $420. However, remember that the prices here are not the same as those there. Consider that in Mexico prices are generally much more expensive than in the rest of the world. That is why I insist that the price of this device seems to me to be quite competitive. You have to consider its main competitors to more or less have a reference, and I think it can stand out in several things. And being a Galaxy, it obviously stands out for starters in its distribution because it will be very easy to find in some store. It can be in physical stores, it can be in online stores, it can be in phone company stores. So that's definitely an attractive point as well of this device. Also, obviously being a device from a fairly famous brand, it's going to be very easy to find accessories like cases in many styles. So join me to know it point by point for you to tell me if it is what you are looking for or not. The front design, like almost all Galaxies of the last few generations, is not as attractive due to the thick bezels. Obviously, if you have a very old device, you will feel that these bezels are quite thin. But believe me, for a full year of the year device, the bezels are considerably thick. Taking into account that you have to add the frame with the bezels, and you are definitely left with a much thicker experience than we would like. So, on an aesthetic level, the front doesn't look that appealing to me, although fortunately it comes protected with Gorilla Glass Victus Plus, so in terms of resistance it is something quite attractive. On the sides we will find a plastic frame, unlike the Galaxy A55 that integrates metal. But in this case it retains the key island, which is this little protrusion on the side to place the buttons. Specifically, we see the power button and the volume buttons. On the top is the tray where you can place a microSD card or the nano SIM card plus a microphone, and the left side is completely clean. The device has a thickness of 8.2 millimeters, so it is considered thin enough. On the bottom are placed two microphones plus the USB-C port and the speaker, which now does not have a grill design. The back cover again looks like virtually every Galaxy today, with a very minimalist design. Cameras that are not enclosed in any kind of module, although in this case the back cover does get to have a little more attractive style due to the fact that it is able to project a little more colors in this edition, which is called Lilac. However, it is also available in ice blue, green and dark blue. So I think a positive thing is the good availability of colors that it has in case you are a person who wants to have a device of some specific color. Also in this generation, the back cover is made of glass, so we are going to gain a little bit more premium feeling in the product, although in this case they do not assure to have any special level of protection. The screen is 6.6 inches and offers excellent quality. The resolution is Full HD Plus 2340 by 1080 pixels. And believe me, it is a very good screen. In this price range, there are manufacturers that give simpler screens, but I think in the case of Samsung, it is giving us an excellent screen quality, even compatible with HDR content. Being an AMOLED screen, it will also offer intense colors and high contrast as well as good viewing angles. Notice how from the side you can still see the content perfectly well. Even the white color is still preserved considerably well from the side, which is one of the weak points of some AMOLED screens. Although it is obviously not a completely high-end screen because Samsung has much better panels yet, but we are in front of a good screen that has a peak of 1000 nits at its maximum brightness, so it's definitely a screen that's definitely going to have good outdoor visibility. And also the minimum brightness can be very comfortable for using this device in low light conditions. Consider also that it's a 120 Hz panel, capable of showing us very smooth motion. This is very useful when you usually navigate a lot between applications or between lists because it gives a much more modern feel compared against 60 Hz screens. It also integrates eye protection mode, which is something we see on several other devices. And it also has two different color calibrations in case you want less saturated or much more intense colors. All in all, I think the screen is very good. In the sound, again, we will find something very good, and I think it can easily be one of its strengths because the speaker is of very good quality and not only has a speaker in this part, but it has a secondary speaker at the top that is going to help us project stereo sound. The presence of bass frequencies is considerably high in both speakers, although obviously the highest quality will be centered in the lower speaker. But honestly, I really like the sound it is capable of emitting. What do you think if we listen to a small test? Although remember that it is not the same to listen to it live. But this device not only has some very good speakers but also good features at the software level, because note that it has Dolby Atmos and Dolby Atmos for gaming available. You can find various surround sound presets to enhance your experience. And even without headphones connected, you can access a 9-band equalizer to customize much more how you want these speakers to sound, so you can really get a great audio experience. It also comes with an optimizer and a wizard to configure how you listen bass when you're using headphones. And speaking of headphones, the bad news is that it does not integrate headphone jack. And I think that can become a weak point because in this price range it's still common to find this port. So you will have to use an adapter if you want to use wired headphones or buy a USB-C headphones or use Bluetooth headphones instead. And in that case, you'll also notice that in addition to supporting the basic SBC and AAC codecs, there's also support for the aptX codec that can give you a bit more resolution. But if you want to enjoy the best experience, in this case, Samsung limits it to use the SSC codec with their Galaxy Buds. Although at this price point, I think we can still accept that it doesn't have ultra high resolution codecs like LDAC. However, back to talking about the software, it has the independent application sound feature with which you can choose some applications that you want to keep their sound on the cell phone, while other applications will send their sound to any Bluetooth speaker you have connected, ideal for watching videos while playing music at a party. Another attractive point of this cell phone is that it has 3 microphones. That is something that very few devices are going to offer you today. And the main benefit of having 3 microphones will be the noise cancellation for videos or calls, so you'll have a better experience in capturing your audio. Let's listen to a test captured with these microphones.
Esta es una prueba de audio captada con los micrófonos integrados del Galaxy A35 5G.
As you can see, the microphones pick up the audio very well. Next, we are going to make a recording using this device while playing music at the maximum volume level of my room sound system to test if there is any distortion. We definitely didn't notice any distortion in the audio pickup, so it could be useful for recording concerts. The front camera is 13 megapixels with f2.2 aperture and fixed focus. Unlike the last generation, it now comes with a much more modern look thanks to the circular cutout, eliminating the presence of the notch. Remember that you can quickly open the camera by double tapping the on-off button from any other app, so it can be a very convenient shortcut. And you can also rotate to the front camera by doing the same gesture. The camera features 2 levels of zoom, so photos with the closed angle will be 9 megapixels. In the upper right corner, we have a button to enable some color filters that appear at the bottom. Each of them we can preview in real time and also adjust their intensity. We will also have facial beauty effects, in this case with 4 different parameters. First skin smoothness, then tone, jaw size, and finally eye size. If you set everything to maximum, it can look like you have baby skin. The response speed of the camera I note is good, although it's not ultra attractive, but against several rivals I think it can take pictures quickly. If we slide down the shutter, we can access a burst of photos, then yes, it could be a good way to take a photo session. If you hold down the shutter, you start recording a short video, but if you want the video to continue recording, you can swipe upwards for this action to take place. Remember that the palm gesture is also available to trigger the photo more easily. Capture via voice commands is also available, and you also have the option of the floating shutter button. So you can say the word capture to get the picture taken, and it also starts a little timer, or you can just move this shutter to an area that is comfortable to reach. The front camera is going to give us good quality pictures. Notice that although it doesn't have fixed focus, it has a good level of detail, and something I noticed is that the color rendering is also quite accurate with respect to the background. Other devices in this price range usually take slightly distorted colors, but in this case, the color is seen with good accuracy and the level of detail as well. The camera focus is a bit more optimized for being far away from the camera, so the best level of detail will be achieved when you have your arm stretched out. So for group shots, I think we'll have an excellent device, although it doesn't have a front-facing panorama mode, but the camera is wide enough to have good group photography. Indoors, where we don't have as much lighting, obviously the level of detail is reduced and the graininess is increased a bit, plus the picture loses a bit of contrast. So I think you do need to be in a well-lit environment to get excellent photo quality, because indoors the quality drops a bit, although it is still acceptable for the price. In backlit conditions, notice how before taking the picture it looks very overexposed and totally burnt out the background, but the result looks excellent to me with a good balance of highlights and shadows with no area still looking overexposed. So honestly, backlit pictures with the front camera come out well, and at night if you have any light source nearby, I think the result is very positive. It will be one of the best devices in this price range in the selfie format. Although in night backlight it is not able to give you a good result, but this environment is one of the most complicated we will see in the tests. Note how with the front camera you can also take good portraits even at night, maintaining good detail and good foreground detection with a natural blur. Although on the day we confirmed that it is not able to keep the foreground objects in focus, although this is something that virtually all devices in the range will do. So, to have the best quality portraits, try not to have any objects nearby to make them look natural. On the back, we will find the main camera of 25mm with 50 megapixels and f-aperture 1.8 autofocus and optical stabilization, and it is a considerably good camera. Then we will find at the top the 16mm ultra-wide camera. It's not overly wide, but I think it's fine, with 8 megapixels and f2.2 aperture. Fixed focus though. So the third camera is a 5 megapixel macro camera, fortunately with f-aperture 2.4 and fixed focus. We are going to try to capture number 3 to test more or less how fast this device can capture. We'll take 2 tries to be sure we've done the right test. Then let's try it one more time. Notice that the device manages to respond very well. And this is a good thing because usually mid-range devices like this don't react as fast, but in this case I was practically able to capture the exact moment. We're also going to test the burst response speed, which can go up to 30 pictures, so that's a positive thing. And notice how it's able to activate practically in the same instant. So it was very easy to get the desired photograph. The burst and the capture speed can be strong points. Again, in the upper right corner, we will find a button to enable some color filters and also facial beauty effects with the same parameters that we saw on the front camera. If we tap on screen, we can adjust the exposure and focus, and we can also lock it so that it's not moving, but we can access the Pro mode to access more parameters like ISO, which can go up to 3200 shutter speed, which can go up to 10 seconds, exposure compensation, focus, white balance, and even many other things like contrast, highlights, shadows, saturation, and tint. So I think it's a pretty good Pro mode in the sense that it offers us a lot of parameters, but unfortunately it doesn't offer us raw photography for more advanced post development, which you can find in other devices of this price. And as smart capture options, note that it is able to automatically detect when you want to scan a document to detect the edges and extract the text in digital format. So it can be a useful tool also for transcribing any kind of document, although the final scan result just looks like a cropped photograph, unlike other devices that include optimizers to make it look like a photocopy. The good thing is that it does include a QR code scanner directly in the main camera interface, without you having to open another mode or another application. The device does feature a high-resolution mode for the main camera, which does seem to make perfect use of the 50 megapixels, so you can zoom and crop your picture, while maintaining excellent image quality. Moving pictures are well done with the ultra-wide camera, and also with the main camera, practically freezing the moment. Outdoors, we will appreciate a very good color rendition, something that is usually difficult in this price range, so I think it stands out a lot in this regard. The photos look natural, with good color accuracy and good level of detail. It should only be noted that even in the main camera, we will get to notice some distortions in the edges, so the lens does not seem to be of high quality, but fortunately, thanks to good software management, I think the photos look of good quality in general if you do not get to see these details. The ultra-wide camera also retains good color rendition, which is much appreciated because it's very similar to the main camera. And curiously, in this case, you don't get to notice so many distortions in the edges, although what you do get to notice is chromatic aberration, but in this price range, it's something very common. But what is not so common is to find good color accuracy in the ultra-wide camera. Indoors, the main camera also retains a good quality, although obviously in this case it costs a little to have as much detail as we saw outdoors because there is no longer so much illumination, but handles noise well, maintains good color saturation and contrast still high enough. The ultra-wide camera has a bit less contrast and the color rendition becomes a bit warmer in these environments, so it seems to me that in this sense it is already noticeable that it is not such a high-level camera. In backlight, the preview still doesn't look optimized because you see some overexposed and totally burned out areas. But after taking the picture, you notice how the result is going to be correct. It has a very good balance of highlights and shadows. You don't even get to notice some overexposed area, and the shadow area also has a sufficiently high illumination. So, you are going to enjoy photography in these conditions a lot, even with the ultra-wide camera, although again, in this case, it seems that the color rendition suffers a lot more, unlike when you are in more normal or more favorable lighting conditions. Also, you know that always in backlit scenes, you can reveal much more chromatic aberration of the lens, so it's an acceptable photograph, especially considering the price range. At night, with auto mode, the ultra-wide camera again comes to suffer a bit in the level of detail and also in the presence of noise, although for the price I think it's still an expected result. If you use the night mode, notice that it improves especially in the handling of noise, because now you simply appreciate some level of grainy, but greatly improves the level of detail. With the main camera, it is curious that the color rendering becomes a little warmer, although it is indeed warm light that was in real life, so the picture still looks good quality. With the main camera, it has a bit more detail level, although you still notice a bit of noise on the edges, but it's not excessive. If you use the night mode, it improves much more in the definition of the most illuminated areas, so even photographing bright signs, you will have a good response. And despite the slightly increased graininess, I think it improves the level of detail very well, and the noise becomes unnoticeable in the overall picture. In darker areas, the ultra-wide camera manages to pick up enough illumination, especially compared to many of its rivals, so this ultra-wide camera excels tremendously in these environments. If you use the night mode, it won't make too much difference, since night mode is enabled from the automatic mode. And with the main camera, it also manages to pick up a good level of detail, even in these darker areas, to have good pictures. So I think that in night photography, it gets to excel a lot. Maybe what we could ask of it is that the darker areas keep them dark and not lighten them so much, but honestly I really like the result considering its price. I even wanted to try a photograph in an ultra-difficult environment, which I usually only try on the more expensive devices. As you notice in the preview, you notice how dark it was, and you also notice that it's going to use night mode automatically. The result is much better than I expected. The truth manages to have a very good picture considering the level of darkness in which we were. Obviously, the ultra-wide camera comes to suffer much more, but believe me, it is far superior to the ultra-wide camera of the vast majority of devices near this price. So it's a camera that I think does a very good job. And with respect to the zoom, note that even at 2x zoom, it manages to retain sufficiently high quality. Although as you get closer, you will notice that the level of detail is reduced, and although it reaches a maximum zoom 10x, I think it is still not so attractive because it no longer has so much detail. The main camera manages to focus perfectly on close objects, so you can achieve very good quality macro photography while also retaining these vivid colors and a good representation of them. And notice how the macro camera has a not so accurate color representation and is not even able to give us more level of detail than what the main camera is already giving us. So honestly, the macro camera doesn't look that spectacular to me. And if the ultra-wide camera doesn't seem wide enough for you, remember that you can use the panoramic mode with the ultra-wide camera to get these kinds of ultra-wide pictures with lots and lots of information without the need to take extra steps back. So really the experience is very good because almost no manufacturer allows you to take panoramic pictures using the ultra-wide camera. Finally, portrait photography will also be of good quality. Note the good edge detection it has for excellent foreground detection that also includes objects unlike other devices that in this price range could give much less accurate portraits. I also like the blur effect generated in the background. What I would like is that it would allow us to take these pictures with a zoom 2x setting for a more natural perspective, but that would be the only thing I could ask for, and that's getting pretty picky in this price range. Honestly, the portraits come out very nice, so the camera in general, I think it's one of the best points of this camera. Strengths. For video recording, it is curious that this device does support 4K recording. I highlight this because very few devices at this price point will be able to give you that resolution available, though obviously it will only be for the main camera. It's not available for the ultra-wide camera, much less the macro camera. But the good news is that even the front camera supports recording in this high resolution. That's something very important to highlight as a plus point. In fact, you also have full HD video recording at 60 frames per second available, but again, only for the main camera. In this case, not even the front camera can record at that setting. So the best way to take advantage of all the features of the device is to record in full HD at 30 frames per second. When starting a video recording, notice that a button appears to take pictures, also a button to pause and resume the content. In fact, we also have quick shortcuts to switch between the main lens and the ultra-wide lens, although note that if you hold down you can enable a slightly more precise zoom, but unfortunately the jump is completely aggressive between the ultra-wide camera and the main camera. There isn't any zoom in between these cameras, but one thing I like is that it also allows you to rotate to the front camera without the need to stop your video recording, and that's something very few devices allow. Also, you can turn on the flashlight without the need to stop your video recording, although if you want to use the ultra-wide camera, you can't use the flashlight at the same time. Also note that they also have an automatic framing option, so the device will immediately detect your body and keep you in the frame. This is very useful if you don't have someone to record you and you are simply going to place your cell phone on a base and want to create content. And something curious is that this device also has a professional video mode that will offer you different manual control parameters, although it does not have recording in a log format or something advanced, but I like that it does have the manual controls. The ultra-wide camera manages to record video in full HD, and the color rendering in the video recording seems slightly warmer than natural, but I still think it's a good thing that it allows us to make the switch between the ultra-wide camera and the main camera recording in full HD. Although the switching is a bit aggressive, so it's not within the optimum, but in the price range, many other devices don't allow us to switch between the ultra-wide camera and the main camera without cutting the video. So obviously with the main camera we're going to have a much more accurate color representation, and if you want to record in 4K, yes, you're going to rely solely on the main camera, but the level of detail goes up significantly, and yet it still maintains good quality video recording with good colors, good detail, very stable focus. So it's a very good device for video recording. Indoors, the ultra-wide camera comes to suffer a little more than the account, but compared against other devices of the same price, I think it does an excellent job in handling noise, although you no longer see a video with so much contrast, but I insist that compared against other devices of its price, I think it can give you a good performance, although obviously it is best to record with the main camera in these environments where there is not so much light so that you have a much better result. Note how the main camera manages to reduce noise much better, maintaining a good level of detail, although the color rendering in this case seemed to me a little warmer than usual. In backlit home, the device behaves well, although recording with the ultra-wide camera, I already anticipated that the color rendering is not as accurate, but maintains a good balance of light and shadow, and obviously with the main camera, this will be even better. Truly, in this price range, you will be hard-pressed to find another device with these backlit video recording capabilities. Most devices in this price range, when detecting the face from the front, will overexpose the entire backlit background, but in this case the performance is really very good, so this is one of its strongest points. At night, the ultra-wide camera is going to have an acceptable recording if you have a good light source, although obviously in darker areas it's not going to be able to collect much lighting, but compared against other things I've seen, even on more expensive devices, believe me, I can tell you that it's a good quality recording with this camera, although you'll immediately notice the difference when you switch to the main camera because of the light input it's capable of having. But talking about the main camera, recording in 4K at night, we are going to have a good quality in level of detail. Although again the color rendering becomes a little warmer than the account, but if you go to the darker areas you will notice a good color capture, so I think it is a camera that also records at a very good level considering its price range and considering the darkness we were in. Another important parameter of the video recording is the stabilization, and note that in this case even recording in 4K has a good stabilization so that when walking you do not feel so sudden movements. Although when running it could be a little insufficient, but still I think it does have a good level of stabilization considering its price. Consider that you can also activate the super stable mode that will automatically use the ultra-wide camera, so the resolution is in full HD, but even when running it manages to stabilize the sudden movements much better, so it is very good at stabilizing as well. It does not integrate a portrait recording mode, and the fast camera mode fortunately is stabilized and is of very good quality, especially compared to many other competitors, although in this fast camera mode it is not able to record video in 4K, but it can be adjusted from 5x for movements of people up to 60x, which may be a little short compared to what other devices offer us, so the fast camera I think could be improved, especially if you want to record landscapes in a more spectacular way. On the other hand, the slow motion can be in HD at 120 frames per second, so it is not something so spectacular, but consider that in this price range there are other devices that do not have slow motion, then I think the result is positive, and also you have the super slow motion, which would allow you to go up to 480 frames per second, although obviously this is more focused on brief moments and it is in HD resolution, but if you can get to have a pretty spectacular slow motion considering the price of this device, possibly the best slow motion in its range. And regarding the focus, I think it is also able to give us a good video quality with a stable focus, able to react fast when it detects some face, and you don't see that it is hesitating when there are more movements. So I think that yes, it will be easily the best device to record video in this price range. The front camera can also record video in 4K, and it also has stabilization, so those are 2 points that raise the quality of this device a lot. Although the framing becomes very close, so you need to stretch your arm a lot to keep this good level of stabilization, but I think it's worth it. Really, the level of detail is very good, and even when walking it maintains an excellent quality. In fact, also in backlit scenes, it manages to recover enough information considering it is a mid-range device, although obviously it does overexpose some areas. But believe me, there are other devices in this price range that will be a disaster in backlight. It should also be noted that it has fixed focus, so you wouldn't be able to bring any object close to the camera to focus on it. Indoors, the front camera may suffer much more when recording video because there will be more noise present and it will be a scene with less contrast than we would like, although it manages to maintain good color saturation. But the ideal is to record in better light conditions. At night, you will have a very similar result. If you are close to a light source, it will have a good result, but if not, there will be a lot of noise present, although it is expected in the range. Honestly, we couldn't ask for something more advanced, but it definitely confirms that in this case we are talking about a mid-range device. Although in the daytime it gives us an excellent result, indoors and at night the result is definitely not so attractive. Interestingly, it retains the fast camera function here at the front, albeit again in full HD, but it has no front slow motion. Nor will it have a portrait video recording mode, and neither does it integrate the dual recording mode, which we do see on the Galaxy A35. In software, there is good news because it comes with Android 14 and One UI 6.1, that is the latest from both Google and Samsung, and offers us a good policy of updates. Specifically, it is 4 years of software updates and 5 years of security patches that are guaranteed for this device, and it is something that not many manufacturers can promise. So it is something very remarkable in Samsung, also considering that its operating system is usually the most complete at the level of functions, aesthetics, and practicality, as even notice how the system applications, you can slide them back down to make it easy to reach with one hand several items. In the notifications, remember that you have a different style that you can apply on some applications that you determine, and obviously you have several effects available, plus you can regulate the color and also the transparency and duration, so it can become something very attractive effect you have available. You can also make, depending on the content of the word of the notification, it looks in a different style. In the customization, we will find the Samsung Theme Center where you have a very good list of themes that you can download, some free and some paid. Also in the store there are different wallpapers and styles for icons plus covers for the always on display feature. So it's a considerably advanced feature for you to keep showing some content even if you have your device locked. Although in this case the always on display feature is not as advanced as what we see on Galaxy S24, but fortunately you can have it at this price point. Remember also that if you press on the clock button, we are going to be able to access some lock screen widgets, so that's also another tool that can come in handy. Edge panels are also available, where you can select not only shortcuts to apps, but also shortcuts to contacts, to smart screen snippets, to direct app actions, and many more tools, as also from the Galaxy Store you can download more edge panels to fully complement your experience. So all that is within reach of a simple gesture and is a tool that no other manufacturer offers you. Remember that Bixby is also available, which is Samsung's voice assistant, which you can activate by holding down the power button, or you can also activate it by voice. In fact, it can learn your own voice. And it's an assistant that was initially bad, but it's been gradually improving. In fact, you can press this button to learn everything it can do. I personally really like changing settings from Bixby instead of having to go to the list of options. For example, you could just tell it simply disable auto brightness and watch it immediately do the action. You don't need to do so many things. So it's a really very convenient assistant. You can even also activate dictation by pressing this button while you're in some text field. I'm doing a dictation test directly with the power button, and it really works well. In the experimental section of Samsung Labs, we will also find the option to enable multi-window for all applications, which is something that only Samsung can offer. In this case, you could have shortcuts to open apps in split screen directly. But remember that you can also slide one of these apps to the center to open it in a floating mode. This floating window can be resized, repositioned, and even have its transparency level adjusted. In fact, you could also minimize this window into a floating bubble. But here the remarkable thing is that you can open more than one application in this floating format and you can use them all at the same time. In addition, all applications will be available in this floating format, unlike other manufacturers that, in case they offer you a floating mode, there are many applications that are not supported. But in Samsung, they are all supported in a forced way. You can also force dark mode on some apps, although in this case only YouTube appears available. It also has some gestures to control the device, though they are fairly traditional. None are unique to this device. The one-handed use mode actually works very well. It is very practical and you can even resize it. It also has the option of video call effects available in Google Meet and WhatsApp, so you could change the background of your camera or select some solid background. But let's do the test so you can see what this result looks like when you are on a video call. You simply need to access the quick settings panel to activate these effects. And notice, in this part you could blur the background of your camera or apply a solid color or simply select one of the images that you had selected before in a predefined way. It also has a soft effect on the face when making these calls, and we will also be able to select whether we want our camera to look cooler or warmer, as well as increase or decrease the light. In addition, we're going to have the automatic framing that looks at how it's going to immediately keep us centered in the camera. So they can be very useful tools when making video calls, for the moment compatible with WhatsApp and Google Meet. It also allows you to clone some messaging applications and allows you to select if you want to have a separate list of contacts so that it does not use the contacts of your main account. And remember that it also integrates modes and routines to automate all kinds of things with your Galaxy, even synchronized with other devices. You know that here I usually show you some basic routines that I usually use. In this case, I could select the activation condition to be a location, i.e. my house. I can adjust the radius of the location to more or less adjust the sensitivity, and I can tell it whether I want this to trigger when I leave or when I arrive. Personally, I'm going to tell it when I arrive at the house, and now I'm going to select the consequence. And I'm going to tell it to turn up the volume on my cell phone in case when I'm home I don't hear calls. I can put a name and an icon to our routine, and in this case it's immediately running it because it's already detected that I'm at home. So you could create a lot of other routines to try to automate a lot of things on your cell phone, and it's something really very useful that only Samsung offers in the Android environment. Within the gallery, notice that if you have some pictures with text, you can also press and hold on that text to select it as if it were digital text. Sometimes it seems to take a little longer than we would like, but you can get to do this action. Likewise, you can hold down on some people and it will automatically do the cropping. In fact, you can forward this item to another application by doing this gesture, although it does not work in all applications. But if this gesture doesn't work for you, you could also save this image inside the keyboard stickers. And notice how you can get to send them quite easily. Telegram does detect it as a sticker, although note that WhatsApp detects it as any image and it looks very bad. But it can become very useful to crop the images easily because you can also copy them to the clipboard. In the photo editor, you are also going to have a magic eraser, even though it does not yet have the Galaxy AI features, but it does include this object eraser that after doing an analysis will allow you to quickly select some object or person, and after a few seconds it will automatically fill that empty space, and the result, believe me, it is pretty good. You can also select several photos to create a collage without the need to download any other application separately. And if you select several videos, you can also give it the option to create a short video and it will automatically try to do this editing for you. Although there are other devices that give you more attractive templates. In this case, it is a simple linear editor, but it can be useful as well. Finally, remember that there is also Samsung Members, which is an application from which Samsung gives various benefits to its users, such as discounts on food apps, clothing stores, and many other things, in addition to advertising their own promotions. So it can prove to be something useful also if you are one of those who enjoy taking advantage of discount coupons. I insist that Samsung's operating system is really very nice, not only aesthetically, but also at the feature level. And even the experience is rounded off in this case thanks to the fact that it has an haptic engine that, despite being simple, it takes advantage in several areas of the interface. For example, when swiping on the timer, you will feel a small feedback in your hand by a short vibration. Let's talk about security, and obviously I'm going to describe the fingerprint reader that's inside the display. It's an optical fingerprint reader, so it's not as fast as the ultrasonic ones, but that in theory honestly responds very quickly. I'm liking the experience quite a bit in the sense of speed and accuracy and recognition. However, as a weak point of this reader, I must tell you that it supports only up to 3 records. This is bad news considering that other devices support up to 5 records, so if you are one of those people who usually register many of your family members or trusted friends, there is definitely too little space here. Also, it doesn't have animation customization as we can also find in other devices, so this could be a weak point. Consider that it also has facial recognition, which could help you to have more comfort when trying to unlock your device. You know, it detects if you have glasses, and it is also able to request that you have your eyes open before performing the recognition. So I think it might be able to offer you a light level of security, but it would be best to just use the fingerprint reader if your priority is security. But for more convenience, you know, you can also make your device stay unlocked when you are in some secure environment thanks to the extended unlock. You can add trusted places or devices, and while you are in this environment, it will not ask for your fingerprint or pattern. It also includes an automatic blocker that would allow you to block any threat via USB or any malware, blocking apps that come from unauthorized sources. So if you want the highest security, you could also enable this option. Remember that it also has Samsung Pass that not only will allow you to automatically fill in passwords by verifying through your fingerprint, which is already very good, but it is also available directly from the keyboard keyboard itself simply by adding the shortcut and again verifying through your fingerprint. You can access your password information, cards, addresses, or any note that you consider confidential but want to insert quickly from the keyboard. Honestly, it is one of the functions that I find most useful. I use it a lot. Samsung also provides its users with a secure Wi-Fi option, which is a Samsung VPN where you will be able to browse privately when you are connected to public Wi-Fi networks. It can be very useful. They offer you 1 gigabyte for free per month, although you can also pay a subscription to increase that capacity. If you are going to connect at the airport, it can be very useful to feel much safer in your navigation. It also integrates the secure folder where we will be able to store applications. And not only applications, but we can also add files so that everything is protected with our fingerprint, password, or a pattern that can be different from the lock screen. In fact, you can also change the customization such as the name or icon to the application so that it is not seen as a secure folder. Simply lock it before exiting so that the next time you are prompted for the password. It also allows you to encrypt your memory card and also has Samsung kits, which can be very useful when you lend your cell phone to a child. Although you know it comes a bit hidden, so you have to edit the quick settings panel before you can add this shortcut. But once you enable this mode, we are going to notice that you have a completely protected environment where children will not be able to leave unless you authorize it through your fingerprint. Samsung offers you some apps specifically designed for children, but you can choose whether you want to use them or not. Obviously, you can also add any other apps you want. And also in the parental control section, you can check how much time they have used the device. You can set limits, bedtime, give them permission to log into some things and contacts that you have on your device. So it's a pretty useful mode. And in the device care section, note that you will also find a malware protection in collaboration with McAfee. It comes disabled by default, but you can enable it if you want to feel more protected. And if you happen to lose your phone, also know that in the security and privacy section, you can enable special protection. It is important that you enable all these options so that you will not only be able to find your phone in case you lose it, but also help other Galaxy users to find their devices. This is a Samsung implementation, and there is also Google's own implementation that all Android devices come with. There is also the maintenance mode so that in case you send it for repair, all your content is locked and cannot be accessed. There are also digital wellness options and parental controls so you can analyze the time you spend on certain applications and set time limits or timers. In addition, you can manage your children's devices if they are Android to set limits from here. And in emergency functions, remember that you can set your medical data, emergency contacts and other things, and by pressing the power button 5 times, you can initiate an emergency call. The battery is 5000 milliamps, a very traditional figure in the Android world. However, in this case, I must tell you that it offers us a very good management of background applications. Although in the foreground, it performs practically the same as other devices, so in that sense, it is not surprising. The battery, let's say it is standard, but if you have heavy applications running in the background, I think it makes an excellent optimization. And in this case, it reached 7 hours and 34 minutes in this background running. You know, my testing is done with this app that consumes a ton of battery while it's running. So running this app in the foreground, it reached 3 hours and 34 minutes, which I insist is about average and even slightly below average. But having this app running in the background while watching videos in the foreground, it performed very well compared to other devices. So I think the battery will give you a good experience. Remember that it also has a power saving mode that would help you a lot to extend its life even more. And if you enable this option, you could also initiate a much more extreme saving mode that could be useful in emergencies, as it restricts you from almost everything on your device and still allows you to add 4 essential apps. But obviously, use it only in case of emergency. The 25-watt charger is sold separately, and that will be one of the main complaints, as in this price range almost all manufacturers do include the charger, but Samsung does not. So you must purchase the charger separately. It supports charging up to 25 watts, but you don't need to buy the original charger if you don't want to. You could also buy other chargers because it supports the power delivery standard. So as long as you buy chargers compatible with that standard, you could also enjoy fast and safe charging. But using the original charger, in 15 minutes it charged up to 27%, in 30 minutes it got to 52%, and the full charge it finished in 83 minutes. So yes, you can get to enjoy considerably fast charging, although it is not its strongest point. Obviously, in this case, we still don't see that it has wireless charging or anything similar, but at the software level, it also integrates something very useful to take care of the battery because it has these levels of battery protection. You can have the device charge up to 100, and then if it's still plugged into the power, it's going to discharge to 95 before charging again. This way, the battery is going to maintain its life for a little bit longer. You could also activate the adaptive protection, which is useful when you leave your cell phone plugged in all night to slow down the charging process. And finally, the maximum protection that will only allow the battery to charge up to 80%. If you are someone who wants your battery to last for many years, this may be an attractive option. This device supports 5G networks, and that is a good thing because in the price range there are some other manufacturers that still do not include this support. In addition, it also includes a mode to regulate your mobile data usage by simply authorizing how apps can connect to the internet. For example, I always tell you that you could tell YouTube to only use Wi-Fi to connect to the internet, and this way you avoid bad surprises in your data consumption. In this case, we do not find support for eSIM and Wi-Fi connectivity reaches version 6, so it is going to offer us a good download speed as long as you obviously have a compatible router and also a good internet provider. In this case, I am testing and it has not reached as much as other devices, so it seems that it is not able to take advantage of the network speed as much, but I think it is within what one could expect in this price range. With regard to Bluetooth connectivity, it offers version 5.3, so we also have good stability with our accessories. And it also integrates NFC to be able to make mobile payments directly with our cell phone. What it doesn't integrate is FM radio in case you still wanted that option. And you can project your screen wirelessly using Smart View. It's an advanced projection because it allows you to project just an app or have the screen off while projecting and even block notifications on your wireless projection, so it can be very useful as well. It doesn't have wired projection, only wireless. Obviously, it doesn't have Samsung DeX either, but it does have Android Auto. And in sensors, we have accelerometer, geomagnetic field and orientation sensor, plus gyroscope and light sensor, and a proximity sensor that looks more like a contact sensor because it doesn't detect when you're close, it detects when you come in contact with the device. So it might have a little bit of a strange operation. But the rest of the sensors are what we would expect in this price range. The Samsung ecosystem is one of the most complete, so in this sense you can enjoy a very advanced experience. Galaxy Buds are available with a fairly large catalog, so you can buy your wireless headphones and have an excellent connection and interaction with your device. Galaxy Watch is also available in various editions and formats and with an excellent interaction between them as well. Galaxy Tabs are also available. So definitely in terms of number of devices, Samsung has a very good ecosystem and it is also a very open ecosystem. The bad thing is that the Galaxy Book has a very limited distribution only for some countries. In Mexico, they are not available. But Samsung has very good ecosystem interaction functions like Quick Share, Music Share. You can connect your headphones to the tablet and the cell phone at the same time, and they will exchange without any problem. You can answer your calls and messages also from your tablet. And in Samsung Notes and the web browser, you can also do the interaction of resuming your activity directly on your tablet. They also have the interaction with Windows computers directly installed on the device so that the user has fewer steps before initiating connectivity. And it features multi-control technology that is compatible with the Galaxy Book and Galaxy Tab. And if that wasn't enough, SmartThings is a Samsung app with which you can connect to devices from many other brands to control home devices. So you can have your smart home very easily and see how Samsung is compatible with a lot of brands and obviously compatible with the Matter standard. So it's very easy to set up your smart home controlled from this device. Also, Samsung doesn't feel as dependent on Google as other brands in the Android environment because despite having Google services here pre-installed, it's not as dependent on them because it also has a direct collaboration with Microsoft which is integrated into the gallery where it is very noticeable, so you could back up all its photos as well with OneDrive. Let's talk about the performance. This device has the Exynos 1380 processor, a processor that was used in the Galaxy A54. So it seems to be going up a level because in this price range, I think it's a processor that we can accept perfectly well. It has 6 GB of RAM and up to 6 GB of additional virtual RAM. It took 3.6 seconds approximately to open each of these applications, confirming to us that it is a processor that honestly comes to feel a little clunky in this device. Even notice that the RAM memory does not seem to be fully optimized. Even when browsing some applications, you might see some stumbles, especially when you're switching quickly between apps. If you've been in an app for a while, you won't notice it as much, but even switching between apps can feel very clunky. Notice how we're going to try to quickly switch back and forth between apps, and you're going to notice restarts. You're going to notice a little bit of sluggishness when it's loading all these animations. So, it is definitely not a device focused on the most demanding in performance, because if you are going to feel that the device is a little slow and does not respond as smoothly as we would like. This may also be due to the fact that it has 6 GB of RAM, which on a Galaxy device can fall very short. The minimum I would like in Galaxy devices is 8 GB of RAM, as it has a very loaded system of options, as you saw in the software section, and that also causes the RAM to become too heavy, and the experience can get to feel this stumbling as you are seeing. Next, we are going to do a test exporting video in. Honestly, it is a more complicated test than it would be at its price point, but since it is capable of recording video in, we are going to see how fast it could edit a video of these characteristics. There. It finished in 46 seconds. That means it's a pretty good device for editing video in this price range. I've honestly seen more expensive devices with inferior performance. So I think if you are able to have few apps open, yes, you might get to notice smooth performance on this device. The storage is 128 GB is what we would expect on a device in this range. It should be remembered that you can also place a micro SD up to 1 TB. So in that aspect, you could increase the storage significantly, and that is obviously a good point. Although currently in the mid-range, we are seeing more and more proposals with 256 GB of internal storage that can sound very attractive, so consider also that data. For games, we find the Gaming Hub, where you can also find several games available for execution without installation. This can be useful if you do not want to consume internal space but want to entertain yourself for a while. Obviously, all these casual games are going to run without any problems, but we will also note that for the much heavier games that are installable, we will have a good suite of options. For starters, we can customize the Game Booster, where we can choose some shortcuts that will appear while we are playing and customize how we want our screenshots to appear. We can also select whether we want to give priority to performance or battery saving when we are playing. If you have your charger connected, you can also select to pass power directly to the processor without going through the battery in order to avoid further heating. And in the experimental section, there is also this alternative management that could cause a little more heating but could raise the performance of the device. In this case, we did the test with this option disabled. When you open a game, notice that in the options bar appears in all these Game Booster options with which you can improve your experience. For example, you can make the screen lock so that the game continues running, downloading some content but without consuming so much battery. We will also find options to lock the navigation bar and to take screenshots or screen recordings. There is also the option to open some applications in floating window. You can select which applications you want to appear in that shortcut section so that, for example, you can open your WhatsApp without the need to leave your game. You can also turn on priority mode to avoid any distraction with calls or notifications and give full priority to your game, in addition to optimizing network traffic. And finally, remember that add-ons are also available. These add-ons can be downloaded independently and can allow you, among other things, to customize the performance of each game individually. If you want to limit the frames per second or take them to the maximum and many other things, there is also another plugin that allows you to activate a static crosshair in shooting games and many other things more, including among them a constant monitor of the frames per second, CPU consumption and GPU consumption. So gamers might be quite attracted to these kinds of features. In Call of Duty by default, this device gives us the average graphics quality at a very high frames per second rate. But for testing, we turned the graphics quality up to high. And even though you can also go up to a frames per second rate, the graphics quality goes down. So we tested it with the very high rate to start with. Although notice that it doesn't have that much graphics support for special effects. But in this price range, we couldn't get too picky in this regard. The truth is that the experience was really very good. The gameplay was very fluid, without really too many low peaks. In fact, you can see a very good stability in the graphics, so if you like playing this content, you're going to have a very good experience, almost completely unhindered. Although obviously there are some low peaks, but they're really very few, and in fact it also maintains good temperature control performance. So we were surprised for the good by the performance of this game. In the Legends game, we changed the automatic graphic detail for a manual detail, setting it on medium quality at 60 frames per second. The experience was again very good, especially considering how appealing it was to see it go up to 120 frames per second, which is something we usually see on much more expensive devices, although when it was getting up to 120 frames per second, it wasn't able to maintain very good stability. So there were fluctuations, but it didn't really go too low. In fact, its minimum peak was 59 frames per second. So with this, you realize that it manages to maintain a fairly smooth performance. In fact, after a moment of hitting 120 frames per second, it was limited to 60 frames per second as with other devices. And in that case, the experience was much more stable, even recording the screen. So, really the experience, as I say in gaming, considering the price, is quite good. Although in this game, we did get to notice a little bit more overheating. In the SpongeBob game, by default, it loads medium resolution and medium quality, but for the test what we did was we went up to 60 frames per second. And again, the experience was pretty good, although this game took a little bit more work, but it didn't go below 36 frames per second, which is still a good experience that is considered smooth. Obviously, it is not a device 100% focused for gamers, but I think it can get to give a good feeling when running these contents, even recording the screen, which is something that sometimes can be complicated to other devices. Finally, in Henshin Impact, by default, we found the graphics quality to be low, and for testing we turned it up to medium quality at 60 frames per second. Obviously, this is the heaviest game we tested it on, so performance was still good, but it's no longer something very spectacular. In fact, you're mostly going to notice it in the stability, although it doesn't drop below 32 frames per second, so we could still say it's a good thing. But the fact that there are fluctuations can give you an uncomfortable feeling when you're playing, just proving that it's not a device built for gaming. Especially when recording the screen, in this game it suffered a lot more. There are some stumbles in the frames per second that can become much more noticeable when you are recording the screen. But if you don't record the screen, you can still have an acceptable experience, obviously as long as you adjust the graphics quality according to the price. I think it is a balanced device that does not have gaming as a priority, but for casual gamers it can be a good option. And with this, we are ending the video review of this Galaxy A35, which seems to me to be a good evolution from the last generation, practically taking the place of the Galaxy A54, being very similar to it in many ways, but at a lower price. So I think Samsung is doing a good job on this generation. It's a device that's going to deliver for you in virtually every aspect, with the exception of high performance. So if you are one of those users that requires a lot of applications open at the same time, you might be disappointed with this device. But if you are not one of those users, I think that in the rest of the features, it manages to give you a considerably good experience. For the moment, we have reached the end of this video. If you liked it, you know you can tell us about it, and we'll see you next time.